Welcome back to another episode of Inside Multifamily Access Control, sponsored by Salto. As always, Colin's with me. How you doing, Colin?
Doing well. Hello, everybody. On my sugar high from Halloween. So
Yeah, for real. It's the we've hit November. We're actually the day before the election, so should be an exciting week for sure.
to say the least.
I just can't believe it's almost the end of the year. That's the part that's crazy. Feels like a blink. But anyway, so for those of you that haven't followed along, and for those of you that haven't, this month we're going to spend time around sustainability. Easy for me to say, but sustainability in environmentals when it comes to access control, smart locks in our space, specifically in the multifamily. It's an area that I would say, and Colin, you let me know if you agree, but it's an area that we hear some things about it, but we don't necessarily see a lot of information or discussion when it comes to this, specifically in access control and smart locks.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, you see it on developments and communities, kind of as some of their core values. You're seeing the gardens, you're seeing a lot of that, but you don't hear as much about the actionable things, right? And so I think it'll be fun to explore. You know, how are we actually enacting some of these marketing ideas and concepts around sustainability?
Yeah, I mean, we hear, I would say, also people talking about like home automation in the unit. So you talk about turning lights on and HVAC and that. But again, uh, briefly, when it comes to the smart locks, it's one of those things that is more given to the people, the HVAC people, and the lighting. The access control, it's sometimes to be stretched. But if you think about our products, there's a lot that actually goes into it. So it's actually more of in a lot of ways, a supply chain type approach, if you would. So when we were looking at some things, I'm sure we'll talk about are things like products built to be longer life, which is interesting to me. If we talk about that one, so less goes into the landfill, less waste. This does play well, I think, for historically what our industry has done, because it's been that safety products that have been built for, call it, 30 years type thing. So, but now as it moves into the more electronics and you have really the gadget side of it being influenced into where products, things change, like protocols of things, ways to communicate, whatnot, do you start to see more things get thrown away at that point as pricing goes down as well? How our market and how our responsibility that we have, how we play into that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think the waste aspect of it into the landfill, not just on the products themselves, but as you mentioned, the supply chain, the packaging that it takes to get there, all of that stuff ties into it, especially in the access control thing, in the access control space. And I think you're also starting to see it with wireless devices, talking about our locks themselves, of eliminating the cable that goes into some of those runs and things of that nature. The other side that you were kind of hitting on is the software lifespan, right? And how do you make sure that the hardware can stay in place as the software updates come, so that we don't have to throw out the hardware and add to that landfill piece. So there's a ton of ways, kind of beyond that energy management, as you mentioned, the thermostats and the lighting control. All of those things speak to kind of operational sustainability. But there's a lot of things downstream in our value chain, I think, that can contribute to the sustainability efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. So things like also non-hazardous materials being used, how much water. I was actually surprised, I'm sure you've seen it, but you go do a tour of the facilities where locks are being made, and the amount of water that's actually used in it is actually shocking, but it makes sense. It's metal. When you get into that, you find out you use a lot. So, there's a lot that goes into that. Even also, though, I think if we expand it even farther and we talk about, there is a play that the doors have and the frames in this as well. So it comes to sort of the envelope and the energy efficiency around that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if you take that operational sustainability that we were talking about at the units and in the units of lighting control and heating control, taking that into the manufacturing process, right? So not only how do we reduce the water, but how do we reduce or offset the power consumption required and things of that nature? Is there solar panels and other ways to conserve energy in the process of manufacturing, ties into that same idea of, are we using the right materials? Are we using the right processes? All of that kind of builds again along that value chain.
Yeah, so there's a lot going on there. The last part that I'm interested in, and also in this that I think we should talk about, is sort of the transparency reporting of these types of things. Like, how do you? It's one thing to talk, like when green first came out, I remember, and all the LEED buildings and the rest was happening. It was a lot of press releases around recycling and things like that. And now, though, I'm curious to see how, just like in diversity and inclusion, it's sort of like, okay, how is the company doing their part in this? So how that comes into play, and how you, as a consumer, can make a conscious decision if it, that this matters to you. How do you make a purchase like this? Or, if you're going to go rent a place, or, how it's another, if we as an industry figure out how to properly communicate this, it's an opportunity, I think, for us to participate in the value that gets created all the way downstream.
Absolutely. And I think not just on how do the developers and ultimately the residents know what us as manufacturers are doing, but also how do we know what the residents and the developers are demanding, right? Because there's so much trade-off in that of, yeah, maybe we can deliver a product at less cost by using a certain type of plastic, but that causes X number of runoff and all of that sort of stuff versus using metal that we can recycle every last piece of it, right? And so there's just so much that goes into understanding the demands and the needs from both sides in order to deliver that sustainable product again, at the end of the day, it's also still got to be at a reasonable cost, right? Which becomes a lot of the challenge. It'd be very easy to say, hey, we're going to be 100% carbon neutral. Everybody is, no, and all of a sudden the prices go way up, which doesn't work either. So it's a balancing act on both sides that I think but it's a conversation that needs to be had, right?
While also handling cybersecurity, while also handling new technology and all the other stuff. So lot going into it, but frankly, that's the exciting part of, of being in business. So,
And I think it's also an additional sign that we're in that consumer space, right? In the multifamily, because again, at the end of the day, it's the resident, right? You mentioned it. I talk about it all the time of residents now can make a decision whether they live somewhere or don't live somewhere because of the hardware that's on that. And when you're moving into a green building that's, certified and has a garden rooftop and all of that sort of stuff, if a resident comes to learn that that lock was manufactured somewhere that wasn't following protocols or in an environmentally unfriendly way, that's pretty damaging to a lot of reputations. So
yeah. And I wonder at some point somebody comes out with a carbon neutral lock and sees that as a selling feature or positioning product on what that all means. So yeah, I mean, the purpose of this was to more or less set up the rest of the month. You're going to see content in the newsletters and stories around this that we're going to bring. It's all going to be about sustainability and the environmental impacts. We have speakers coming on in the following weeks that are going to talk about this as well. And the desire here is to start a conversation and bring some awareness. So I think we did a good job of setting up the framework of what we're going to talk about. And I look forward to getting into it. So thank you.
me too. Looking forward to it. Hope everybody joins us again in the coming weeks.
Absolutely.